Well, today's McBLOG has an R20 rating. Viewer discretion is advised, and it's definitely not suitable for young people. You're probably wondering why. Well, we're going to show you what educators in some of our schools and our state broadcaster TVNZ wants your child to watch. Prepare to be horrified. Now, I don't know if you've heard of the website RE. It's a taxpayer-funded online news and current affairs platform hosted by our state broadcaster TVNZ, focusing on content for young people, and it covers topics such as LGBTQIA+, the planet, health and bodies, amongst others. And there's also some charming videos and articles such as these. I don't think I'll read these out, but you can see them. There's this one, How to Watch Porn Ethically, and this one. Yeah, charming. These are supposed to be informing our young people. And this quickly gives you an indication of their distorted moral worldview and why you need to demand any taxpayer funding back. Remember, TVNZ is a state-owned broadcaster. But my concern is that the government is using state media to soften us up for what's coming in radical sexuality and gender education. And in one article on RE talking about this, a family planning senior health promoter said, "We need to acknowledge the role that pleasure and enjoyment plays in people's decision to be intimate. Without pleasure, relationships and sexuality education is at risk of being reductionist, heteronormative, medicalized, and focused on risk avoidance." Yes, the last thing we want to do is focus on risk avoidance. And then they did a big feature on the Pleasure Project, and we've put together a fact sheet on this. The Pleasure Project is an international not-for-profit mission on a mission to get, quote, sex educators hooked on talking dirty and embrace desire, joy, happiness, and pleasure in sex education. We can have safer sex if we know how to have good sex. And the Pleasure Project wants to provide sex education with the emphasis on sex, not education. Right, so check out the fact sheet. Now, last week, a parent sent us an email and said that her 15-year-old was instructed to watch these videos at their state secondary school. Now, I'm going to show you some short clips out of them. Please note, they are highly objectionable. They're not for younger viewing. In fact, I'd suggest an R20. But this is what your school and your state broadcaster may be exposing your young teenager to.
Sex can obviously look very different for different types of trans people, dependent on medical status, sites of dysphoria, the potential partners you might be sleeping with, and I could go on and on. Some people find using the penis deeply uncomfortable and prefer to find alternative methods of having sex, depending on their preferences. The popular method is muffing. Muffing is when you or your partner fingers your inguinal canals, located behind your scrotum, which can be incredibly pleasurable.
The same sentiment goes for trans men, trans masculine people, and other vagina havers who don't identify as women. Many enjoy frontal or anal fingering, rimming, frontal penetrative sex or anal penetrative sex. Many don't, and many enjoy only some. Some people use packers or other non-flesh cocks such as strap-ons. Hot tip, it can be really hot to receive a blowjob with these, as the psychological aspect can be a huge turn on.
Some pre-op or non-op transgender women, trans feminine, and other penis-bearing individuals prefer to use their penis when although they might want you to remove the gender connotations from it, preferring to use words like strapless or regendering with other feminine language.
Also, despite much of what we know about sex telling us that it's what's underneath that counts, clothing can be really hot and affirming for gender diverse people. Keeping a binder, padded bra, or tucking underwear on during sex can help someone feel more comfortable and sexy.
Now get out there and have some consenting,
mutually enjoyable,
gender affirming,
hot sex.
All right. Yeah. Remember, this is being targeted at teenagers, and schools are telling 15-year-olds to watch this, maybe even younger. You probably thought, sure, can't get worse than that, can it? Well, yes, it can. There's a focus on anal sex. Now, just a reminder, this is highly objectionable. It's not for younger viewing, but it's being targeted at your teenagers.
People with penises having sex with other penis bearers anal sex can be an important part of the overall sexual experience. As you may have heard earlier in this video, using lube is really important to reducing risk of trauma and tearing.
For people bottoming or on the receiving end of anal sex, it can be a highly pleasurable experience, yet at the same time it can be really scary. So a good practice to get into is cleaning out your rectum, whether that's through a high fiber diet or fiber supplements, douching, or regular bowel movements. Cleaning out your rectum is a good way to avoid any unwanted yet totally natural dirty business. Just remember, as much as tops think they're in control, bottoms are actually in charge because they can dictate the depth and speed of penetration. And once you're more comfortable with being try experimenting with relinquishing that control and embrace the power bottom you were destined to be. Another tip.
Okay, and if that's not enough, one last clip, which I think you'll probably be very glad to hear that it is the last clip, just a short clip.
Being said, this kind of sex is not as simple or binary as just top and bottom. There is so much space here for all sorts of sexual dynamics. You could be a dom top, a verse, a power bottom, or someone whose sexual flexibility and prowess can't be contained by mere words.
Totally. Also, anal sex is not the be-all and end-all of sex between penis bearers, and plenty of people don't enjoy it. Other enjoyable sex acts can include, but are not limited to, foreplay and teasing, rimming and fisting, hand jobs, and oral stimulation. Just don't forget condoms here too.
One thing people of any gender and body type can agree on is lube, lube, lube! And
Yeah, you're probably wondering, why do I want to show you this? It's not that I want to, and it's not that I want you to see it, but it is being targeted at your teenager if you have them at school. And what's concerning just as much is that nowhere in all of this are words such as abstinence, delay, marriage, commitment, intimacy, love, consequences, and there's nothing about parental supervision or family values or religious expression in much of this content. The few schools that utilize these programs are indoctrinating our young people with gender ideology and sexual pleasure, and they're simply putting pressure on our young people to embrace sexuality, sex and relationships far too early and in a way that most parents would object to, which is why they work hard to hide it from you. But now you know. Now, you may be thinking right now, well, at least this material isn't in our schools. I would encourage you to check. Be vigilant. Be actively engaged in what your child's school is teaching in this area. Don't leave the door open for our children to be taught about sex and relationships by the voices of people, including Ministry of Education, including some schools, and including the state broadcaster, around agendas and values that don't align with ours. And one report we'd really encourage you to read is this one, which is about responding to the transgender issue, but it's just a sexuality issue in general in schools, and it helps you as a parent. And it gives specific guidance on speaking to your school leaders and getting a good outcome. You know, it's well past time that we need to push back on this.